Anyway, if you feel like standing, stand. If you don't, you can stay seated, but let's sing both verses.
My pleasure to introduce Mr. Albright, and he and Pastor are good friends. I think they spent some time at Fruit, and he's gracious enough to come lead us this evening. So, close it, whatever the Lord leads you. You make sure.
Philip is not hearing you.
Philip's not hearing me. Okay.
While he's doing that, if y'all could be in 1 Kings chapter 19, and I'll join y'all there shortly. But while you're getting there, imagine if you were at work one day, and a complete stranger came up to you, and he said, well, he didn't say anything. Actually, a complete stranger just walked into the building. You knew it was not nobody with your work, your job, your organization, where you with. And he just kept walking, or she kept walking. And this individual, you could see their uniform, their ID badge, their key card, something. You sat at your desk, your workstation, where you were, and they just handed you your uniform, handed you a key card, and just walked off. You know this was a job opportunity. What you were being told, you wasn't 100% sure, but you knew it was a job opportunity. Now, there's enough people here tonight, some people would think, I'm going to be like Scooby-Doo, your feet can't get traction, and everybody can run about it like top spin. But the rest of us might be thinking, you're crazy. You don't know what you're getting involved in. You do not know what is going to happen. But when it comes to follow Christ, it's something kind of similar to that. We're called to be sold out to God. Now, God ain't necessarily telling us to walk off and leave everything, destroy our tools and equipment like we're about to see happened with Elisha, excuse me. Excuse me if I mess up their names, they shouldn't be that close together. But yes, we're called to be sold out. And as we're getting ready to get into the text of 1 Kings 19, verse 19, Elijah had just defeated the prophets of Baal. Jezebel has sentenced him to be executed. He has gone off and had his depression and, if you will, a pity party, saying he's the only one left to serve God. And God told him, he said, no, I've got 7,000 that have not bowed to Baal. He said, get up and go do something. And that's what we're picking up in this verse 19 of 1 Kings. And it says, so he departed thence and found Elijah, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him. And with the 12, and Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle to him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said to him, go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled the flesh with the instruments of the oxen. And he gave it to the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. I'm going to pray real quick and then get into the text. Lord, thank you for your many blessings. Lord, thank you for me being able to be here tonight and give your word. I hope I do you well and I do the people well and calm my nerves and help me be able to speak clearly and thoroughly, not for me, but for you and for them, and bring you praise, glory, and honor, and let your word be honored and glorified in everything we say and do. In the name of Jesus, amen. When we're first introduced to Elisha, he just plowed. And Elijah walked by through a mantle and just kept on going. Now, this mantle, what's the big deal about that? Well, a mantle had several different purposes at that time. In this case in point, it was, as we went to the introduction, this was Elisha's job opportunity, the key card, the uniform. A mantle was a sign of a prophet, as well as many other things. And what's the big deal about Elisha plowing? Elisha working. Well, that's it. Elisha was working. If you go through the Bible, you see a lot of people God calls. And they're not sitting around saying, I'll move when God calls me to do something. They're up doing something. Gideon, even though he was in hiding, he was sifting out wheat. David was tending sheep. Some of the disciples were fishermen. Matthew was an evil tax collector. Paul was just as bad as evil when he murdered people as Christians. But yet they were doing something. They were working. Now Saul did become Paul when God turned his life around. But the point is, they were working. They were doing something. So God is going to call someone that is willing and able to get up and go do something. And I say willing and able, and I'm going to clarify that so I just be clear on what I mean by this. But if you're not willing to get out and do something, I don't know if God's really going to call us. I mean, they say, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Ask someone that's got a busy schedule. That seems to be true. And people say, I don't have time. Well, there's a study called Making Space by Jeff Vanderstelt. Great study if y'all ever have time to do it. And he brings out the point, the people that get the most done are the ones that spend the most time with God. Proof that God is in control of power and time, and just God can break our concept of time and ability to get things done, because we have a concept of 24 hours, 7 days a week. But God can get so much done in 2 seconds that we can get done in 2 days if we just allow Him to work through us. And while we come to want to do things, if we're not willing to do the small things, God may not necessarily call us to the big things. No one has said anything to me, so Pastor Steve or anyone else, but if you're not willing to usher, if you're not willing to work at the daycare or nursery or help Miss Myrtle or Miss Canary when it gets to the car when it comes to sudden thunderstorm, I don't know if you can hear the call to do the bigger things. Because, I mean, like that song said, our talent, we may be weak and we may be few, but there's a lot of things that can be done just being obedient to God. And what I said with those that are willing and able, some people cannot get out and do things. God understands that. I hope everyone here understands that. But you can do something. You can read. You can study the Bible. And believe me, I understand there are times you just cannot physically read. I understand that more now from breaking my wrist 2 months ago whenever I was on medication and could not hardly move, but I could pray. And if you can't read physically for whatever reason, you can still pray. Actually, you have a great opportunity. If you can't do things, you have a great opportunity to be one of the greatest prayer warriors of this time, which is something we will never have enough of. And with everything going on, we need all the prayer warriors we can get. And even if you are shut in and you can't get out too well, if you have someone's number, give them a phone call, shoot them a text, send them an email, right? Do old school and send a card or a letter. Some of those cards, letters, phone calls, if you're in a down spot, those can be some of the greatest encouragement anyone can ever get. I've been there before and I've had to get some, and there's some of the best encouragement knowing people are praying for me. Knowing I have an army of people there but with my back saying, I love you, brother. That is some of the best encouragement you'll ever have. And I said something about Elijah plowing, but notice how simple that was. Elijah was just working. And what happened? A man just coming through a man line. Well, that was something real simple too. We so often want this, well, according to Sunday, this earthquake event. You know, the parting of the Red Sea, the burning bush, and a voice talking, someone walking on water, the storm automatically in your life just ceasing. But most of us, if we actually saw a parting of the Red Sea, a burning bush, someone walking on water, we're going to run the other direction. Amen. We will be so scared we don't have a clue what's going on. But part of that may be because when God speaks, we're not listening to the small stuff. When your neighbor that you don't know too well is having a rough week, maybe they lost a close loved one, and you're not listening to God saying, I need to go speak to this person. I need to go minister to this individual. If we're not listening to the small things, how are we going to be prepared to do the big things? And I got ahead of myself in my notes, I'm sorry. But oftentimes, whenever God does call us, what do? We give the Holy Nose. I'll pray about it. That's the go-to. Maybe later, and if someone else can, then I'll do it. But as I was thinking on this, what are the scenarios that can actually play out here? But one, no one does the ministry, and God's not done with it. So that ministry suffers. Everyone that will be blessed with that ministry suffers. You suffer. The church suffers. Pastor will be suffering. Or if you can't get some, or maybe later. Well, later may not come. Someone else may have filled that place. Or then someone else that fills the position, everyone's miserable. You're miserable because you're obedient to God. The person that filled that position, they're miserable because they're doing something God didn't call them to do. Everyone involved in that ministry is miserable. Not only the ones directly involved in that ministry, but you want to talk about a contagion. Misery within the church is a very good contagion. And possibly the worst thing for the individual that's sitting there is the ministry's going well. The ministry's being blessed. Everyone involved with the ministry's being blessed. And the one that said yes when you said no is having a great time with God, a great relationship with God. God's blessed that individual so much they're just bursting at the seams with God's love and joy. And there you are, being like Elijah was before he went and got Elisha, wallowing in self-pity, because we will not be obedient to God. Now, I understand saying no all too well. As I was saying to the brother before others come in, I'm not an extroverted person. I'm not one to get out in front of the crowd and say stuff. Fear can grip me very quickly and very easily. I despise change a great deal. So I can understand that. But we have got to trust God. You know, let's make it a little bit more personal. God, I would do what you call me to, but I'm scared you will, and let you fill in the blank. It made me take away my job, make me move, make me sell this house that I worked so hard for, and I finally got paid off. Now I've got to go somewhere else. But if we're holding on to the job, if we're holding on to money, if we're holding on to possessions, if we're holding on to the things of this world, who are we really serving? Are we serving God? Or are we serving the things that God is allowing us to hold on to for Him? Are we serving the tools that God has given us so hopefully we could glorify Him more? I mean, there's nothing wrong with God giving you that boat and a lake house or a beach house, whatever you may have. And you can glorify God with all that stuff. But whenever we let fear grip us, it will grip our joy away as well. Now, as we look at this, it appears that Elisha has some wealth as well. Because it said he was plowing with 12 yoke or 12 teams, depending on translation you may have, of oxen. Now, some people, if you go look at that, they say there was 12. It was just 12. But a team is more than one. A yoke is generally at least 2. So he had at least 24 oxen, it appears in this story. And he killed some, cooked the meat, served the other people, and he actually used the tools that he was using to kill and cook the oxen. He was sacrificing things God has given him for the glory of God. He was turning his back on the things of the past to look forward to the future. He was willing to let go of the things that God has given him to serve God in a greater capacity. Now, whether this talk about fear and stuff, whether he was scared or not, I don't know. I have no clue. Like I said earlier, I would be. I'd be the deer in the headlight of the tractor trailer barrel for him. I'd be pretty tenderized by the time he got through with me. I don't know if he scared me, but that doesn't matter. Because what matters is he did not rely on himself. He relied on God. And just like he did with Elijah, God put just like Elisha was able to turn to Elijah for help. God said God's not going to do like we so often think He's going to do. He's not going to throw you to the army, to the pack of wolves. Hopefully you have an army of people praying for you. Them prayer warriors we mentioned earlier. There's nothing, you talk about a senior citizen. I love to hear them pray. You hear people, I love to hear pray in church. That's a great thing. You talk about a funeral, they was a prayer warrior. That is something to be said at a funeral. That's something that can honor and glorify God and run the devil in his tracks. So God is going to use other people to help you. God will put other brothers, or if you're a lady, a sister, in your path to help teach and encourage you, to mold you into the person you need to be. You will not be a second duplicate of who's teaching you and who's molding you. God does not. If God wanted a second duplicate, He would probably use that same person. But God will use them, their skills, their talents, their trials and ministry to help honor you so you can honor Him. And God is going to not leave you alone throughout the whole path. And once you are in the ministry, in the midst of it, just remember that you can turn back to someone. You can turn back to God, and that God is there to lead you through the path. So yes, fear is a big thing, but being prepared is a great thing too. And yes, I'm prepared now, but I am still terrified beyond means right now. That's the reason I'm jumping around so much. But we must reach to the point where we're willing to serve God and trust God, not ourselves. Not your neighbor, not your friend, not your brother, not your sister, not your pastor, not your husband or your wife, but God. And God will be the one to lead you to where you need to go. And with that said, I know this is much shorter than Pastor Stephen does, but he talks too much.
Just watching online.
Preaches that extra sermon.
But first and foremost, I know this is a Wednesday night crowd, but if God's called you to have a relationship with Him, please work that out first. Please work that to have where you know that God is your Father, that Jesus is your brother. Please work that relationship out first. And if you don't know what to do right now, please pray about it. Hit the Bible about it. You're not going to pray too much about it unless God's done told you to move, you know to move. I was talking with a buddy the other day, and people said, I need to pray about it. He said, not if God done told you to do it. So, be ready, be prayed up, and be ready to go. And be willing to say yes. And like I said, Pastor Stephen and I want to say anything to me about what may or may not be going on in this church. I feel like this is pretty good going church with what I've heard. But be ready to say yes. Be willing to do what God asks you to do. Something small or something big. And just know that God has got you, and God is going to lead you and look after you. But like I said, first and foremost, like I said, it's a Wednesday night crowd. But make sure your relationship with God is where it needs to be. And with that, I'll close in a word of prayer, and I'll get just unwired. Lord, thank you for your many blessings on us. Lord, thank you for your word, the power of your word. And Lord, I pray that I've done you well, and that I was able to deliver a message that these people could understand and apply to their life. I hope that you will be with these people today and tonight and throughout the rest of the week until they come back on Sunday, and have a great word for them to apply to their life, and help us to be sold out to you and honor you and glorify you in each and everything that we say and do. Help our life to be your life, and not worry about things of this world, not worry about the possessions that we may think we possess, but focus in you and on you, and Lord, be like John and less of me and more of you. And let our words be your words, our path be your path, and just be the light to the world so others may see. Lord, thank you once again for your word, your blessings on us, and I pray that you be with this church and its ministries and everything they have going on. In the name of Jesus, amen.